All right, if I can get that turned off. All right, kids, it's us. I know you're all clamoring for us to be on. Oh my gosh, I even sound bored.
Gotta
Uh,
pep it up there.
yeah, I know. Well, I just had a full day of work.
Anything going on at work?
No. I mean, it's busy work. It's stuff to do. Um,
I found that a lot of times it's almost those days of work when nothing is going on that are worse than the ones that you have a full
it
day of work.
wears you out
You're like,
more.
yeah, the whole time you're sitting there, like you said last night, you're watching the clock, and it'd be like it's got to have been a half an hour, 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I gotta find ways to do better at what I do. At any rate, um, hanging out, doing our thing. This is DG Podcast episode 201. Of all things, much like cancer, we refuse to go away. As many times as you try, we are malignant and will not cease to, I don't know, reform and show up in other parts of your body.
what is it? Relapse? No, relapse isn't the one. Is yeah.
Relapse.
You have a relapse. Cancer comes back, right?
We are the internet's cancer, and we will relapse over and over and over again until we kill the internet, which we may. It seemed like it was impossible. How many people on 4chan or the government has tried to kill the internet? We're going to do it. We're going to succeed.
You got to have an ambition in life. You can't just
A
you can't just
goal,
yeah.
some
You got to
massive-
have something to shoot for.
Yeah. My goodness. At any rate, Jason, what have you been doing?
Trying to think. So at work we have it's kind of a trade show of sorts. I've been trying to get this thing working, and what it is I've got a Raspberry Pi at work. If you're not familiar with Raspberry Pi, it's a little Linux box, a little computer.
One of the most moddable personal
Oh, yeah.
computers you can find, yeah.
Yeah, and it's really cool. The problem I'm having is that like I'm trying to get it so that people can tweet to a certain account, and it'll catch the tweet, and then it interfaces with this string of LEDs, and it will change the colors and the patterns and stuff of these LEDs. The problem that I'm having right now, it's so annoying. I think I've got it working just fine. I clicked the button to run the program, and it goes out to Twitter and starts watching the feed. But if you don't have a tweet going through every second, then it eventually just closes down the connection and errors out the program. I'm sitting there going, how on earth is that supposed to be helpful to me?
What are you trying to get it to do?
Well, like I said, what I wanted to do is take and listen to Twitter, and so the people come into the show, they'll be able to tweet to a certain account, and it'll get their tweet, and then do some mathematical changes on the tweet or whatever, and feed it to this string of LEDs and change the color or the
So
blinking
it'll give you
pattern.
a visual representation of people tweeting.
Yeah.
It'd probably be more interesting if you did some sort of audio, but then it would just end up being just bah. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
exactly.
It would just be I mean, it would have to randomly select so it wasn't just one constant, just annoying noise, and it would
Right.
end up sounding like random tones.
Exactly, and that's why I'm working with the light string instead. But for whatever reason, it just won't sit there and listen to Twitter. If Twitter has nothing to say to it, the program stops working.
Well, Twitter always has something to say.
I
Is
know,
it a specific account, or
but it's a specific account. I was able to get it to listen to 3 tweets in a row, and I wasn't fast enough on the 4th tweet, and it stopped. And that's as long as I can sit there and I can put in one tweet after another really fast, it'll keep going. If I go in and I tell it, listen to all the tweets that mention basketball or Trump or something that people are always talking about, it'll just sit there and go. It'll just hum away merrily to itself, and just one tweet after another will pop up on the screen. But if I want it to listen to a certain account, it keeps locking up, and I have
There's got to be a way to set it so it'll allow itself to sit idle and stay open.
I know, but I try, like I said, it comes back with an error for me and says this is the error that it's getting. But, I've done searches for that error, and I found a couple of places where people are like, hey, I'm getting this error. Nobody has come out with anything that says what to do about it. No one so far.
There's
it's
an
like
odd
a new error thing. Yeah.
There's an odd error I get on my tablet that people complain about and no one's ever fixed.
Yeah. The other thing, they released a shift code today for.
I saw that. I need to enter it.
For Battleborn. Battleborn's like a year old now, so they released a shift code. Kind of disappointing.
It's just a crappy skin or something.
No, it's a legendary loot box. And maybe you'll get better luck than I had, but
you just had a bad roll.
Yeah, I mean, it gave me one legendary item. It was a legendary loot box. It gave me one legendary item, one blue item, one green item, and a white item.
I actually tend to just sell all my items.
I do have two loadouts. One loadout that I use if I'm playing a character that's a ranged character, and then the other loadout if it's a melee character. But you have like
watch the stream. I'm yawning a lot.
You have like 4 loadout slots now. They used to have 2, and then you could open the others, and then an update came and they gave you another like 2 more free loadout, but I don't even use them. I suppose I probably should, but it's hard to sit there and go, well, let's see which ones would go well together to boost, like the LLC characters only, because they each have a mix usually. They'll have some melee characters and some ranged characters, some healers, and each one's got their different mix of characters, and nobody has exactly the same. Like, actually, I think the peacekeepers, they might all be ranged characters. No, that's not correct, because Galilea, Sword and Shield, is a peacekeeper. Yeah. Anyway. Let's see. Other than that, I've just been, crap busy with stupid stuff recently. Do you know what frustrates me, right? Okay, so...
Many things, Jason.
Yes, many things frustrate me. I'm thinking back through my week, trying to figure out what's going on, what I've been doing and things. Reading books. I read the first 3 Caiaphas Cain novels. I ordered the first. Actually, I ordered both of the omnibus editions of the Caiaphas Cain novels.
They're entertaining.
They're great.
I told you. Great. I told you they were great. I mean, it's like I really like Gotrek and Felix, but Caiaphas Cain is a whole different kind of fun.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's some parallels you could draw between Felix and Caiaphas, but but not really. But at the same time, so I ordered these 2 omnibus editions, and omnibi. Anyway,
yeah, sounds good.
I haven't gotten the second one. It's on back order. It's supposed to be coming the first of next month. But I got the first omnibus, and it actually has 3 short stories that I've never read that are between each of the novels.
Oh yeah, maybe they came out in a White Dwarf or something.
Maybe, because one of them explains how he lost 2 of his fingers.
Oh yeah.
Remember how he has his augmetic fingers on one hand? Another one explains, why he's so terrified of the Necrons.
Yeah, well, he has an excuse, but
Well, it's the actual story of Interitus Prime and him being a chaplain or whatever to the, not chaplain, that's not,
Commissar.
commissar to the Adeptus Astartes. And his first run in with the Necrons.
Do
And
the
then
Adeptus Astartes really need a Commissar? I don't think
Probably
they
not.
normally do.
well, his thing
Like
was
the
like,
Adeptus Astartes are going to be more dedicated to the Imperium than he would.
true. Um, the story started out with him not attached to that I don't remember that chapter at all. What it was he started out somewhere else, and he ended up going through a Necron teleporter, running away from them, and ended up in a firefight with a bunch of Adeptus Astartes, and he just attached himself to them until he could get back to his original regiment. There was also there's the one where he gets sent to this planet that's half of it's a hot planet, half of it's a cold planet, because the planet is facing the sun. You remember that one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Meridian, something like that.
Something like that.
Mordian or something like that.
I'd have to look. Anyway, the basically everybody lives around the center of the
equator,
planet
because
ring.
it's the only decent weather.
Yeah,
It
because
doesn't rotate much like our moon.
yeah. Anyway, they're going there because there's this chaos fleet that's coming towards the planet. They get there and they find out that there's already chaos agents on the planet. The only thing is that when they get there, they also find out that the chaos followers on the planet are Slaaneshi followers of Slaanesh. And if you don't have any idea what I'm talking about, just weather it.
It's Mordian. Yeah.
Yeah. And the
Or
other
Luna,
one,
there's another planet called Luna that's like that.
the other
Oh,
one
no,
is,
that's the moon. Anyway, I'm sorry.
yeah, the fleet that's coming in, they are Khornates. They're followers of the god Khorne. Well, the
Most
reason that
attackers are, but yeah.
the reason that the Khornate followers are coming to this planet are to stop the Slaaneshi from doing whatever it is they're doing. Well, it turns out they're summoning back this Slaaneshi sorceress that had been killed, and she talks to Cain because she already knows him. Cain killed her before, and that's one of the short stories. Right before that happens, it actually goes through and details when Cain ran into her and the circumstances behind him killing her. And then suddenly it made sense why she was like, "I'm coming back for you. You know you love me, Cain."
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, that makes sense.
The one of my favorite stories from the Caiaphas Cain books is when he runs into that other commissar that believes that he's just a god sent from the emperor. You know what I mean? Just some saint of some kind because of the legendary stories. Because believe it or not, as crappy an individual he is and all about his own self-preservation and letting everybody else die instead of him,
Right.
he constantly gets in situations where he does awesome things on accident and everybody thinks he's the greatest hero of the Imperium. And this other commissar runs into him and thinks he's just the most wonderful person ever. And he gets into that fight where they're literally trying to flee or something. And they end up running into literally the center of the orc war boss camp. And he just accidentally, just out of luck, murders the greatest orc war boss of the sector. It's like he turns his pistol, sticks it in the eye slot where the orc is, and then just blows his brains out. Like there was no way anybody could have beaten him. Even in a starts would have had trouble.
Yeah.
And he blows him away, and the other guy's like, "Oh my gosh, he's the greatest hero that ever lived." It's like you can't ever erase that. They just assume he's just awesome. It's just funny.
One of my favorites is the one that I was just talking about with the Slaaneshi and stuff, because it had a commissar in it that hated Cain, him. They went through school together, just hated him, and he got attached to this group that they were always quoting scriptures and stuff, and they were all, basically cut from the same cloth as this commissar that hated Kane. And by the end of it, this one sergeant who watched Kane, deal with this chaos incursion and this sorceress coming back and all that stuff. He basically goes back to his home planet as a prophet and proclaims that Kane is a prophet for the Emperor.
Yeah.
And now he has this religious book that the guy wrote, and it's like the scriptures according to Kane.
Yeah, there's a religion based around Kane. I like when it quotes from the book because some of them sound more profound than him just cursing about things.
That was he's like, I forget what it was that he actually said, but he's like, I'm not going to stand for this. Let's go. Something like, screw that. We're going in.
Oh, it's great. Well,
but apparently the books were actually based on, not based, but inspired by another guy who acted the same way. I forget what his name is off the top of my head and who wrote those books, but I may have to try to look him up one day. I'll look it up real quick while I'm sitting here. So go ahead, keep going.
Right. So
Flashman, Harry Flashman. That was the name of the guy that Caiaphas Cain that inspired Caiaphas Cain. It's a
writer, or
no, that's the name of the series. He's a Sergeant or Sir Harry Paget Flashman, a character created by George MacDonald Fraser, and he does the same kind of thing as Kane. He's only there for himself. He's always trying to get out of the tough duties and stuff, but he, through this kind of trying to get, Flashman is a coward who flee from danger if there's any way to do so. He has one great advantage in concealing this weakness. When he's frightened, his face turns red rather than white, and observers think he's excited, enraged, or exuberant, as a hero ought to be. So it's that kind of... And this was written, let's see, between 1925 and today. So...
Sorry.
Yeah. Anyway.
I had this point and I lost my steam.
Sorry.
No, it's not that. It's just like I'm mustering all like excitement after a long day of work, and I'm like, okay, let's. And they're like, oh, well, and I'm like, just gotta fall back into it. What was I gonna? So there's a bunch of stuff I didn't talk about last week.
Mm-hmm.
Been going on for a while. So after I bought my fancy TV,
okay,
I was like, well, I'm gonna use it to do something. It just so happened that the next day was WrestleMania. Like the day before I had bought the television.
Mm-hmm.
The next day after I'd bought it was WrestleMania. And I thought, well, what the heck? I'll get the WWE Network and watch WrestleMania. I don't think I've ever watched WrestleMania live ever. I don't think I've ever really watched much things live at all. And I'm not a big wrestling fan, but they're goofy fun, so I watch them sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And as of late, I've been interested because they brought back some old characters and stuff.
Okay.
So I was like, screw it, I'll watch it. And it was all right. There's stuff I didn't like. There's stuff I really liked. The Hardy Boys returns, who were gone for a while. Their story is really interesting. Jeff and Matt Hardy, they were the two more famous tag team guys who used to do a lot of jumping off of ladders and breaking tables and do a lot of the crazy stuff. And a lot of the reason why they did that is they were young and stupid. And so they got really famous for being this really good tag team that just did crazy stunts. But just these two kids. Now, Jeff was considered to be the charming one who could do a bunch of stuff, and Matt was just kind of there.
All right.
He had no personality, and he was just kind of a part of it. So eventually they moved on, got let go from the WWE or WWF at the time. I don't remember. And they moved
Okay.
on to do like minor stuff. I think they worked with TNA or something for a while and a bunch of offshoot brand stuff.
Okay.
And they did something weird. Of all people, the one that was considered not the most charismatic, Matt
Hmm.
Hardy, the brother,
Okay.
decided at his later ages, they're in like late 30s now,
Okay.
that he was just going to reinvent himself and create a brand new character that was crazy, stupid fun.
All right.
And he recorded this this whole video where they just sort of like, let's do this on our own and do something stupid. Where apparently his whole Matt Hardy thing,
Hmm.
he just goes crazy. He
Okay.
goes he just turns into a crazy person and starts hallucinating, and he starts calling his brother Nero. Um, and so he would do these weird things, and it culminated in this big video which he called the final deletion, where he's going to delete his brother or something. And like he appears, I'm going to describe this as best as I can so you can understand the ridiculousness of it. So he's challenging his brother, and he's talking all crazy, and he has big hair now and a big white streak through his hair, and it's just
Okay.
he looks like a nutcase. And he sends he sends a fleet of drones to his brother's house. This is all CGI'd for some reason. Poorly CGI'd, to talk trash to him and challenge him. And one of the drones projects the crazy Matt Hardy, broken Matt Hardy is what they call him, as a like Princess Leia hologram in front of him to like challenge him to the final deletion or something. And then then Jeff runs out, jumps on a motorcycle, and gets chased by an army of drones that is apparently controlled by Matt Hardy. And eventually he gets to his brother's house, and they have this big fight in his backyard. And broken Matt Hardy fights him. It's like he's fighting him in a mask, and then he takes off the mask, and it's not him, it's this other guy. And then it's just it was this really weird, but it was sort of crazy, stupid fun. And it was so entertaining and so crazy. Like there was one video that they did where Matt Hardy was convinced that a giraffe he was talking to was the reincarnation of George Washington, and he kept calling him Mr. President, and it's just stupid, crazy fun, right? So think of these guys who got a bit older, stopped having interest in the WWE, got sort of got laid off, moved on to some like minuscule crap stuff, reinvented themselves, and became popular again on their own just by recreating themselves as new things, right?
Right.
And they became so popular because of the crazy stuff they were doing that they were brought back. Now that is a unique story if there ever was one.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like they just literally reinvented themselves so much they're like, we need to bring these guys back. They got this new crazy story and everybody loves it. And they showed up and the audience went nuts. They're like, oh my gosh, it's the crazy guy on YouTube. Who's now in like one of the biggest wrestling venues ever. The Goldberg and Brock Lesnar fight was honestly don't care for Brock Lesnar, and everybody was pissed off with Goldberg because he was beating him. I like Goldberg more, and I have the nostalgia for his character. I wish he would have won instead of Brock. I mean, what do you want? You know what I mean? It was just a dumb. So they got to one of the other matches which I was interested in was it wasn't a very interesting build up, but they had Roman Reigns, who was mostly hated by a lot of people.
Okay.
And they had The Undertaker.
Right.
And I was like, okay, The Undertaker always fights at WrestleMania. He lost his first WrestleMania once against Brock Lesnar, and everybody was surprised and horrified. He basically had a win streak of like 21. and not ever having been beaten. So they have their match, and the Undertaker looks tired and old and out of shape and not doing well. You know what I mean?
Right.
And it's like the other guy has to sort of carry him through the match, and it's not a great match. You can tell the Undertaker's missing spots, and he's wearing out, and he just doesn't have the energy for it and that sort of thing. And he loses again for the second time, and everybody was really bummed out, and nobody wants the Undertaker to win. So he gets up, puts on his outfit, they have a little moment, and he goes to leave, and he stops. He walks back into the middle of the ring, takes off his gloves, his hat, and his jacket, lays it down in the middle, and walks away. And everybody goes, holy crap, what just happened? Because at that point you realized the old man who looks tired in the match, he doesn't look like he can, he's up for it and that sort of thing, leaves his stuff in the middle of the ring and walks away. He retired.
Yeah.
And it surprised everybody. And you can see people crying. They're like, the Undertaker retired? He's been there forever.
Yeah.
The Undertaker, he's eternal. He's been there since like the 70s or something. Well, the 80s really. But, I mean, he's been a constant mainstay of wrestling for as long as I can remember. And,
same here.
Yeah, and it was a surprise to see him literally just retire. And he did it sort of like the old wrestler would. He took off his stuff, laid it in the ring, and then just left. Like it's just it was this thing. And usually old wrestlers sort of put over a young guy to try and help them up on their last match or something like that, which he sort of did. He broke character for the first time ever. In the entirety of his character, he stopped and kissed his wife at the side of the ring, and he never does. He never pretends to not be the Stone Cold Undertaker guy. And so it was fascinating to watch. It was a depressing, emotional match, and everybody was, crying and stuff. It was interesting. I really don't have a lot of use for the WWE Network, so I just sort of have it.
Right.
And I thought to myself, maybe I'll look to see what's on there. And I watched that Camp WWE, which is the weirdest concept. It's a cartoon by Seth Green about if the WWE wrestlers were little kids at a camp that was run by Vince McMahon.
Uh-huh.
I mean, The Undertaker is one of the kids, and it's like he's just an emo kid who's really into death. It's funny, too, because at one point they're screwing with the kids to try and get them not to leave. They say, you can't leave, your parents died. And they're like, what? And Triple H is doing this. He's like, yeah, your parents died, you can't leave, and everybody's crying and stuff. And it's funny, the Undertaker's standing there and he goes, if they died, I would have known. I'm like, interesting. It's funny, he holds funeral services for everybody's parents, and he's all like, apparently he's like Big Show's parents are Jewish, and it's really complex, so he has to spend a lot of time prepping for it. His character's interesting. John Cena's character's the protagonist, wide-eyed, stupid kid who's always positive and thinks he can do everything. It's a goofy show. Stone Cold's, as a little kid, is entertaining because he's constantly trying to screw with Vince McMahon, and he's flipping everybody the bird. It's a goofy show. So the most entertaining part I got out of the WWE Network was, honestly, I finally decided I was going to look through and see if there's anything to watch on there since I had it for a bit.
Right.
And guess what I found? They have a previous log of all the previous stuff on the WWE Network, which includes the WCW. And I went to the very beginning of them airing WCW live on cable when they were airing it on TNT.
I remember you saying that now, yeah.
And I watched from the very first episode that they ever aired, which started out in Mall of America. And I was like, I'll just watch this like a TV series like watching Star Trek. I'll just play it and I'll do stuff, but I'll sort of watch it and see. And it's been entertaining because not only does it feel like I've gone back in time and I'm watching a show from the 90s, but I'm also like reliving plots that I sort of was aware of, but I never actually watched myself.
Okay.
You know what I mean? It's like you heard of the really bad story about the Yeti, or the
Uh-huh.
Yeti, which was just the worst character ever created. And
That sounds like an awful
oh well,
character.
let me tell you the premise of this concept. So there's this big superpowered guy who's kind of like a god and sits in a throne in the sky.
Okay.
That's the best way I can describe. They give him a big chair and put a spotlight on him. It looks like he's in the rafters somewhere,
Okay.
and he yells things. And he he has a son who's called the Taskmaster.
Okay.
And the Taskmaster's whole sign that he's evil is he has painted on like eyebrows. Oh, like you should Google this guy as I'm talking about it. And the Taskmaster's kind of like a short, tubby, blonde dude with weird painted on eyebrows. And so the whole goal he has is to go after Hulk Hogan. Now, Hulk Hogan has got all the big name people behind him. The Taskmaster has got all these idiot scrubs that lose every match and nobody cares about. But somehow their team,
Those are stupid
their
eyebrows.
team literally called the Dungeon of Doom or something like that.
Uh huh.
Have just the worst wrestlers on it. They have one guy called the Shark.
Uh
He's just a big fat guy who bites people. There's another guy who's called Zodiac, and he's just painted with a bunch of black and white colors.
huh. Okay.
There's another guy in there that's really dumb, but I can't think of him. They're all just super stupid. They're just incredibly dumb. So they have this build up to one of the big pay-per-views, and they're trying to convince. They're like, we're going to take out Hogan and we're going to tear him apart, yada yada yada. And they have the Giant, and the whole gimmick is the Giant is like the son of Andre the Giant, and it's actually Big Show down the road. Like nowadays, he's called the Big Show, but then it's like, oh, he's the Giant. Of course, he's a giant. They just made it up.
Of
And
course.
it's just a really big dude. They're like, oh my gosh, he's devastating. He's come for Hulk Hogan. And the Taskmaster's using him to get at Hulk Hogan. And they finally set up this match where he's going to fight Hulk Hogan and get the belt at this
Okay.
pay-per-view. But they have a trump card. They have a backup plan, which was this giant thing that looked like an iceberg.
Okay.
And the iceberg, like, they would shine light on it, and then something would happen, and it would flash and stuff, and you weren't sure. And it's like, it's our trump card, and it kind of looks like there's a guy inside of it.
Uh huh.
And then the thing finally breaks out, and I find out it's the Yeti. The Yeti that came from some mystical Himalayan something, and it's like some mystical creature that's going to defeat Hulk Hogan. Now you think to yourself, oh, it's like a white Bigfoot, like a Yeti always is, right?
Uh huh.
The Yeti that came out of the iceberg that they captured, that was the trump card to defeat Hulk Hogan if the Giant couldn't, is a guy dressed as a mummy. And he not only is he dumb looking and he's not a Yeti, he's a mummy, but he comes out and the first thing he ever does is him and the Giant get Hulk Hogan between them, and they just kind of hug and gyrate like they're trying to crush him. And it looks awkward and slightly sexual.
Oh, great.
It is the dumbest but the greatest things I've ever seen. I was like, oh my gosh, the 90s were amazing. I'm following these stories, and I finally got to the point where Scott Hall and Kevin Nash had left the WWF at the time, and they signed up with the WCW, and they got more money and that sort of thing. And they moved over, and they're starting out in this new company. And I'm watching this, and they're doing like their whole gimmick and stuff. I was like, I've heard about this. The creation of the whole NWO thing and the whole, I mean, it's really entertaining to watch because I've heard about all these things that have happened, like how bad the Yeti is. But I haven't seen the episodes. Well, now I've seen the episodes, and it's really dumb. But I've actually been having a surprising amount of fun watching it. The other story to talk about is let's start out, first of all. I started to do the math, and I sat and I thought, well, I have a 4K TV, and I really have nothing that's 4K, like, content-wise.
Right.
I can watch some 4K stuff on Amazon. Man in the High Castle comes out in 4K. and it looks really good. The Dolphin movie, which I've watched like 5 times. It's just I don't have a lot of 4K content. So I was looking at it, I was like, well, the PS4 Pro does 4K. And that upscales games and does all these other things. So I was like, well, I could get that. And I start to look in, well, it's like, well, if I'm not going to, I don't have enough money to buy a PS4 Pro because it's like $400.
Right.
But if I sold my current PS4 for about $200, I could afford it. Or at least I could kind of afford it and pull it off.
Right.
The PS4 Pro is a strange sort of piece of hardware where when it first came out, and I still feel this way today, that it's a useless piece of hardware unless you're one of the guys who really wants a high-end thing and has a 4K television. If you don't have a 4K television, there's very little reason to upgrade. Honestly, there's very, very little reason to upgrade. It's basically just a PS4. The interface isn't different. It doesn't float above the table. It's just another piece of hardware. But
it doesn't float?
No, it doesn't. But I was
I'm getting my money back now.
I have all these games. They'll look better. I have a 4K TV. It'll be great. I can just do all this stuff. And I was like, I could pull it off. I could pull off getting a Pro, and it'll be great. So I was like, well, I'll go and sell it locally in the Facebook classifieds or whatever. So I posted it to like 3-4 places.
Okay.
A couple of people got back to me. So I was aiming for about 200. It's like half the console, the price I paid for it, which isn't bad. 200 is about average, I think, from what I could tell on YouTube. I was getting so lowballed from people. Like I had a guy show up and be like, "Oh, I'll give you 120 for it," and I was like, "No." He's like, and then you get the idiotic questions. Like I put in there, comes with one controller, no games, just the console, original box, great condition, blah blah blah.
Right.
First question I get, how many controllers? Just one. Oh, okay.
It's on
the other guy shows up, comes with 2 controllers, right? No, it just has one. It's on the description. Oh, okay. Another guy, how many games? No games. There's no games listed in the description. At what point did you assume I was going to give you a bunch of games with this? I'll give you $120 for it. No, I'm not going to sell it for $120. It says $200 on the thing. My heck. Another guy wants it. He's like, oh, well, this, and this. I'll give you $150. And at that point, I was like, well, screw it. If I can just get the cash now, because at that point, I'm sold on wanting to get PS4 Pro. I was like, if I can just sell it, I'll get it now. And if the guy wants to give me $150 for it, great. And he's like, and I was like, you gonna pay for shipping and stuff? He's like, no, I can come and get it. And I was like, okay. So he said, okay. I'm sitting there, nothing. The next day I sent him a message. He's like, well, I'll have to do it today. I'm like, okay. Nothing. Send him a message, doesn't respond. Send him a message, doesn't respond. And I'm talking to Chance, and I was like, I'd like to get one. I'm trying to sell it. I was like, do you know anybody that wants one? And he's like, no, not at the moment. So after, and he's like, well, you could do Craigslist or something. Because otherwise I have to go to eBay and put it on there and wait a week for it to find a buyer. And it's just dumb. So I'm sitting there, I thought to myself, maybe I'll call GameSpot and see
if they're doing trades.
Yeah, they're doing trades or what they got. And I called in. I was like, well, how much would you give me for a PS4 if I traded it in to try and get a new console? It's like, you do trade-ins and stuff. He said, yeah, we do trade-ins. We'll give you $160. And I was like, well, that's more than the other guy was going to give me, and I was just going to accept that, so why not?
Right.
And he goes, and we have a deal at the moment where if you trade up to another console, so like I trade up to get the PS4 Pro,
right,
you'll get an additional $25 on it. And I was like, $185, awesome. That's close to what I wanted anyway. I was like, absolutely, I'll do it. And I'm looking at the clock, and it's like an hour and a half to class, and I was like, I'm just going to go now. So I just got in the car and left GameStop, and I brought it in, and the guy tested it, and everything's great. And he's like, I haven't seen the original box and stuff like that. And I put all the original cables in the little packages where they came from, and it looked really good condition. I cleaned it like thoroughly, and I had reinitialized it because I planned on selling it, and the thing looked great. And the guy tested it and stuff, and I was like, well, at least you got the original box. He's like, no, we just repackaged it and throw that stuff away. I was like, oh, okay. Well, I guess I kept that forever for a reason. And then he's like, and then he pulls out the stuff, and he's like, do you just want this? And it's the earpiece.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, you don't want the earpiece? He's like, no, we just throw them away. And I like use the earpiece for the podcast.
Right.
I was like, okay, I'll keep the earpiece. He's like, great, and then they did the 185 deal, and I grabbed the PS4 Pro and ran out of there like I was getting away with something. And from what I found out from the guy, that deal had ended the day before, but because the guy on the phone told me, the other guy on the phone told me that the deal was on, he was going to give it to me.
Which is awesome.
Yeah, well, the 185 made it so much more affordable for me.
Right.
And I was able to pull it off, and I ran home, plugged it in, started installing something, and went to class and came back, and I was like, I haven't even tried it. Jason, do you want to play something? And you're like, sure. So we played some Battlefield 1.
Yeah.
Which is a blast. And
Battlefield 1 is an impressive game.
It's pretty. It's a good-looking game.
Not only is it a good-looking game, but, you know, I was telling my wife after I got home that night, I said, if they made a game that was nothing but the flying part, I would totally get it. I just the way they did the flying, I really liked the biplanes and stuff. Okay, so if you're unaware, you must have been living under a rock for a while, but it's set during World War I. Yeah. So, you know, no jets, just the wood and canvas, basically biplanes that they used to use. I gather that they may have had some aluminum in some of the ones later in the war.
Nope. Aluminum wasn't developed until later on in World War II. And it was such a prized and hard to get material that the Japanese wanted to start to make some of their prototype planes out of it, and it was extremely difficult to produce and get. Aluminum would have been awesome for biplanes because it's light and durable. They didn't have aluminum.
I was trying to, because they did have some planes that had metal in them.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, aluminum is like a World War II, World War II invention. Yeah,
I was remembering wrong. Anyway,
I just know too much about that stuff.
No. Like those. Anyway, they just did a really good job on that game. The first-person shooter stuff, they did an excellent job on it. I do like the fact that it's got some story stuff into it.
Oh yeah, there's a whole plot for each of the chapters.
Yeah.
Different character and everything.
And it just makes for a really enjoyable experience. Actually, before the podcast, I was trying to come up with a title for the podcast, and so I was looking for gaming-related articles. And one that I found was, do games really need to tell stories? And the guy was sitting there going, no, they don't. It's movies and books do it better, so video games don't need to.
What a stupid premise.
I know.
Well, other things do it better, so you don't even have to try. It's like, hey guys, I'm going to write a jingle for a commercial. Don't even attempt it. The orchestras do it better. Why would you have a jingle? Orchestras do it better. That is the dumbest, flawed argument I've ever heard.
Yeah, and that's the thing. When I'm reading through his article, he's like, you know, saying that it kind of ruins the experience because, you know, if you're there as part of the story, you should be able to change the story. I'm like, no. If I read The Lord of the Rings, it's going to end the same way every time.
You want to choose your own adventure?
Yeah, and he's like, but at the same time, he's like, it doesn't work for a choose your own adventure because blah, blah, blah. And he's saying that, you know, so people have been getting around it by instead of having like a narrative in the game itself, the environment becomes the narrative. And so you have like, you wander through an area, and you pick up items, and and those items are like diaries or something that tells you story about what's going on, and I'm sitting there going, well, that's fine, but why shouldn't a video game have a story? It makes no sense to me to not have a story.
Well, we've talked about this before, and at its very core, a game should be fun.
Yeah.
But a story adds to it. Now, a story shouldn't replace the game.
If it comes to it that the game is no fun, but it's got an excellent story, you've messed up.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just don't think he understood what was going on.
Well, it's like his vision of what a game should be is what it is, and nobody is allowed to infringe on that opinion. You know what I mean? It's like that's what it's supposed to be, and that's what it is. Excuse me. And so it ends up being. It's like, look, in my opinion, a game should be fun, but if somebody made an entire just sort of point and click story that you barely interact with and release it on the PlayStation 4 or something like that, I think it's dumb and a bad game, or not really a game. But if people want to play it,
right,
like, then so be it. They're allowed to. It's when you start to define a genre to be what it is that you start to restrict what people are to create in it. It's like the gaming industry does not bend upon the whims of what you think it should be.
And my thing is that I felt that he was missing the point of video games entirely. Like we pointed out, video games are supposed to be fun. If they're not fun, then you did something wrong. It's entertainment. Yeah. And, you know, it could be that I don't like the game. I mean, you enjoy... I've been enjoying Warhammer Total War Warhammer, whatever, but you like that game much more than I do.
Yeah, I dig it a lot. It's like you like it, but not as much as I do. But that's cool. We have different tastes. It's what the world is about.
Exactly. And so, for me, you know, it's not that great a game. For you, it's a great game. And for him, evidently, no, I'm not saying I'm not having fun. I'm just saying that, you know, I think it's a good game. You think it's a great game, kind of thing.
Well, you define it as not that great, and I was like, oh, whatever, Jason.
Anyway, you know, I don't think that just because some other media does something better does not then negate the fact that you can use a different media to tell a story. It's like, yeah, sure, could Michelangelo have done the statue of David in bronze? Sure. He did it in marble. Does that mean that he should have done it in bronze? No. It's just a different media. You know, does that... I don't even know if I'm making sense now.
Yeah, it's whatever the creator wants it to be. At this point, it's like when people get bent out of shape, it's like, well, there should be a more diverse cast in this movie, or there should be a this in this video game, or there should be this should be different. It always comes back to what is the original intent of the creator. If the original intent of the creator is to have a bunch of black guys in it, then so be it. If the original intent of the creator is to have the most awkward white guy in it, that was his story. Now, you could subjectively say that it is bad or good. You can subjectively say that Michelangelo should have made it and made Daniel and, I don't know, steel, or they didn't really have steel. You know what I mean?
Right.
That should have made it in some other medium, or should have painted the picture. You can say that, but that's still, I mean, you didn't make it.
But that's only your opinion.
Yeah, you didn't make it. That's his. You can hate something somebody made, but that's still theirs. And simply in trying to impose your opinion on somebody else's creation and then implying that, well, this is how it should be because of my feelings or opinion, and that your stupid garbage opinion matters to anybody else. It's just the worst. It's like implying that every garbage opinion this podcast has should be the standard for not only popular media but politics and culture. You know, it's just like, it's
you mean
just
it shouldn't be?
No, it shouldn't be. Well, it should be, because the world would be probably a dumber place, but It's just such a dumb way of going about it. At any rate, how did we start this conversation?
Well, it was the whole story aspect of the.
Well, right. Well, what were we talking about before that? The PlayStation 4. So one thing. So one thing I would say. So what's the PlayStation 4 Pro like? So I spent a bunch of time looking into it, and me and Jason played a bunch of Battlefield 1. And the next day, I spent a lot of time reading onto the options and the menus and what can or cannot be done and what I can or cannot do. And I realized, it's like, so am I getting the best resolution? I'm going to the settings and it says it's outputting at 2K. And I was like, what? And then it said, well, you need to check your TV. And I read online, it's like, well, my HDMI ports output at 4K. And apparently I have to go into a specific setting on the television and tell it to enhance to certain ports, certain HDMI ports, so that they interact with input media in 4K. So I have to tell it to do that. Not only do I have to tell it to do that, but it only does it on ports 2 and 3, not 1 and 4. It's like, why wouldn't they do 1 and 2 or 3 and 4? But no, it's 2 and 3, the 2 in the middle. Okay, well, the PlayStation 4 is plugged into 3. That's fine. I did the enhance. So now it's actually outputting in 4K like it should be. Mm-hmm. Well, what else can it do? Well, there are a bunch of games that have come out that have patched it specifically to function better, to utilize the much more RAM space and more powerful hardware and processor speed and all that stuff. Not just the 4K and higher resolution. So some games have actually patched it so that it works better with the PlayStation Pro or PS4 Pro. I'm just calling it Pro now, all right?
Okay.
Because the name's long and it's awkward to say. So it does that, but not all of the games have boosted that. The games that do look pretty as all get out. Some games strangely look really good when you wouldn't think that they would. Games that have patched it. It's like, what was it? Dark Souls 3 patched it, but it doesn't output at 4K. It improves some other things and whatnot, but it doesn't output at 4K, even though it's like their official patch. You don't have a patch for some big games you think you would, like Metal Gear Solid 5 or Bloodborne, or you know what I mean? But there is a massive 4K improvement patch for the PS4 Pro for No Man's Sky of all games. Not only is it a fantastic patch, and for those who've played No Man's Sky on the PS4, they'll actually nod in agreement. One of the most annoying parts of it is you can tell there are limitations because of the hardware. So when you fly over the surface of a planet, literally mountains will start to sort of form and appear in front of you because it's just the render distance is garbage and it can't build these mountains in the distance and that sort of thing. Believe it or not, it runs amazing on the PS4 Pro. So if you enjoyed No Man's Sky, it knocks it out of the park because now you don't see mountains sort of building in the background all of a sudden.
They're actually there.
Yeah, the resolution is better. It doesn't, like, all the graphical glitches go away. It looks really good. Diablo 3 of all games, that's old as farts, has a 4K improved patch to it, and it does really well. So there are a bunch of games. You can find a list of them and stuff. There's another feature on it that's called Boost Mode. Had no idea this existed, read about it online, went and found it in the menus and turned it on. Guess what Boost Mode does?
I remember you saying, but I don't remember off the top of my head what it was.
So it essentially takes games that don't have 4K patch, and it sort of forces an overclocking on the games so that they can utilize more of the hardware. So they can utilize more of the RAM, more of the GPU, and the processing power and that sort of thing. And so you'll ask yourself, well, it's like, it's not that big a deal. It doesn't up-res things to 4K and stuff. It's like, no. You know what it does do? Overall, it makes the games run so much better. Games that don't have patches for that thing, apparently it completely eliminates all of the glitches and the bugs from Assassin's Creed Unity. Not only that, but it tends to take most games who run at like a iffy 30 frames per second and ups them to about a 60. Frequently, a lot of games that have some sort of processing issues don't anymore when you turn them on. When you turn on boost
When you
mode.
turn on boost mode.
And I was like, why isn't this on all the time? Well, because one or two games crash utterly if the boost mode is on. And they're dumb games that I don't own or haven't played. But it's one. It improves load times. Like, it literally loads faster because it's utilizing more of the processor. It renders things better. It's just overall just improves everything on the game. So, I mean, the PS4 Pro is not necessary, but the PS4 Pro will give you the best quality experience on pretty much any of the PS4 games out there, whether it is Pro patched or not. And interestingly enough, if it's Pro patched, boost mode doesn't do anything. It just doesn't,
Right, it doesn't
initiate.
go beyond, yeah.
Because essentially doing boost mode on its own.
Right.
Just deliberately trying to utilize the hardware as opposed to just forcing it to increase the... So it's actually really cool. Any game I own ends up being better, looking better, and running much better because it has a lot more hardware to play in, and it just... load speeds are better. It's the best experience, period, for playing PS4 games. It's just the best experience. Is it necessary? No. 4K, even then, like, you can live without 4K. I think the other stuff is probably more useful. It's almost like upgrading your computer to where it couldn't run a game and now it runs it awesome because you just improved the processor or the graphics card or something.
Right.
That's essentially what it feels like. Like, I got a new computer and all the games I had before just run fantastic now. Not that they didn't run badly before, but now they look better and the load times are shorter. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's a surprisingly useful something that I've been very happy with. If only it had a UHD player so I could watch 4K Blu-rays, but I guess that's the Scorpio down the road.
Yeah.
It's good. It's been entertaining. Man, we've been talking about crapping myself. Hey, look at all my toys, you guys. I've been playing Super Mario World. I've been playing a bit of... I've been actually, since I have the 4K, I've been playing Tomb Raider, but I stopped for a bit just so I could use the Pro.
Uh-huh.
And I basically installed every game I had that had patches for it that looked better, just so I could see them and play with them a little bit.
Right.
I need to go back to Tomb Raider, which is going to be odd, but yeah, I got the PS4 Pro, spent a bunch of money on it. It's like, oh, right, back to the original Xbox, or the Xbox One. But yeah, it's been cool. It's been really cool. I've been playing some Dreamcast. I've got that set up. I've been watching old school wrestling. So I tweeted out, or I put on Facebook, Chance sort of noticed it. I was like, I'm sitting here playing Super Mario World and watching WCW from 1995.
So you're having a 90s day.
Yeah, well, it was one of those like, what year is this? It's like, oh my gosh, Hacksaw Jim Duggan just came out with his 2x4 and was yelling at people. I was like, what year is this? But it's been a lot of fun and stuff to distract me when, life sucks and is stupid.
Yeah.
At any rate, we're about an hour.
Yep.
Anything we miss on your end? Anything we need to talk about?
Not really. We have our test coming up for karate class on Saturday.
This is one of the biggest tests I've had in my time training in martial arts, and the one I'm least stressed out about.
Yeah, we both have been, pretty.
We've done this so many times now where it's just like.
We're still gonna get, hyped up and stuff when we're out there in front of people and everything and doing the test.
I suspect, but yeah, I have the least amount of stress going into it.
Yeah. We have been practicing for quite some time.
Well, not just that, but perhaps it's because getting to this rank, I suppose, means that we've probably been going to those tests more than pretty much anybody else besides Gary and LaDonna.
Yeah.
And so we've seen that thing, we've gone down that road. we've experienced more belt tests than anybody else. Perhaps we're just like disillusioned by the drama of it, or not even disillusioned. We're just like, it's just another. I've done this.
It's old hat.
Yeah, at this point we've done it like 11 times.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, well, let's do this whole party again. At any rate, though, why don't we get out of here, Jason? Anything to leave us with? The video games need stories.
Video games don't need stories, but if they do have a story, they're gonna. It needs to make the game better. It needs to add to the game. If it only just adds a little bit, then it's still a necessary element, in my opinion, because
people still are trying to find story inside Pac-Man.
Yeah. There is
implying that there isn't a story in video games is dumb.
Yeah. Or that the thing is that is it necessary? Should every single game have a story?
No.
But should a video game put aside story if it would make the game better? No. Just because a movie or a book or a television show can do it better doesn't mean that it's not necessary to the game. And it would detract from the game if the game had
that means you should never try.
Yeah.
Well, a book's already, capable of creating a story the best. Why would we need movies?
Yeah. I don't know.
Oh, but movies are great. Why do we need music? They already have music in movies.
Yeah, seriously.
It's probably the other way around. If we went by his logic, we would only have books and music and pictures.
Yeah.
And that would be it. It's like, why would you improve on something that already does it good? Because it's interesting to see it mixed. Anyway, let's get out of here. Say goodbye, Jason, as we run out of here kicking and screaming.
Later.
Oh, man, I was so prepped for the outro.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Distracted Gamers podcast. If you like the show, follow Rhett and Jason, the world's two most lethally stupid internet personalities, on Twitter @DG Podcast, or check them out at www.thedistractedgamers.com. If you loved or hated what you've heard here, email them at thedistractedgamers.blogspot.com and share your feelings. Not that Jason will care, since he hasn't any, of course.